Welcome in, Dween Nation. This is your host, Justin Paez, alongside Genoa Agudelo. And as The Rock would say, we are back. We are finally back. We're ready, diving into some quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, defensive, positional rankings for the draft, which is this Thursday. And don't worry, we're going to get our certified, our spoiler picks of what's going to happen on Thursday. But as of right now, what's up, Genoa? How have you been, man?
Yo, Dween Nation. Took a nice little break, but we're back, Justin, for draft week. We've been waiting. This is now where the NFL season really gets interesting now, Justin, because now we're going to see all these new fantastic rookies. This implies well with fantasy, Justin, which we're so ready to get into as the summer begins. And hey, it is draft season. We're so excited to find not only our stars, Justin, but the gems in the draft after the first round. That's what wins you Super Bowls, and that's what wins you fantasy championships, Justin. I'm doing great. I'm so excited to get down to this. And hey, man, let's dig in, man. I'm so excited.
Let's not waste any time. We're going to start with quarterbacks today, and we're talking about tight ends in this quick episode. And we're going to start a quarterback at the top of the food chain, the projected number one overall pick, Caleb Williams. Looking at it, guys, it's not much of a question where he's going to go and why he's going there, because he is the best quarterback in the draft. Obviously, a lot of drama was surrounding him with, combine. He wasn't participating in all the activities there. But it's just about a done deal. I think everybody knows it. Supposedly the Bears have only brought in one quarterback into their facilities to try out and talk to, and that was Caleb Williams. So he's set to be the Chicago Bears quarterback. But just looking at him himself, he does everything. He's the Superman, like for USC. Bad O-line, bad defense, and was just going insane all over the field. He had a good offense. Obviously, he has a good offensive coach in Lincoln Riley when he was at USC, but it was a pretty basic offense. But now he gets to move to the NFL. We're very excited. Jano, you got any quick thoughts on what Caleb Williams has to offer?
Oh, Caleb Williams has a lot to offer, Justin. One thing, a little, now that this is the week that Caleb Williams goes number one overall, just a background story. I remember when Caleb Williams was a backup to Spencer Rattler, who's also in this draft at the University of Oklahoma. Caleb Williams was behind him, and I just remember, Justin, when Spencer Rattler was the Heisman favorite going into that year, and he just did not perform well. And behind him was Caleb Williams, and Justin, that was my first year, living in Austin, and I was rooting for the Longhorns. But at that year's, Red River rivalry, Caleb Williams led like a 15, 20 point, lead comeback and a win against my Longhorns, stunning us. And ever since then, he's taken off, finished that year pretty good in Oklahoma, and then went on to play 2 years at USC, winning the Heisman, not this past year, but the year before. And, this is Caleb Williams now. He's gonna be in the leagues now, and this is gonna be so interesting to see. We're comparing him to Patrick Mahomes essentially, Justin, because he does move like that. He has that athletic build to a quarterback, has that arm, that side throw, kind of like a little bit of a Matthew Stafford. Definitely Mahomes can get out the pocket and make those awkward throws under pressure. So there's no doubt he's the number one pick. Just a slight thing that worries me, Justin, is that he's going to be playing in the city of Chicago. I've never been a fan of Soldier Field and their actual turf. It's never really been that type of stadium. I know they're going to be making renovations in Chicago, but and also the coaching staff, Justin. We've never been an Eberflus guy. You mentioned that the past 3 years he was with Lincoln Riley, who's a great offensive mind in the college world. But now I think he kind of downgrades essentially with Eberflus. So they do have playmakers, but that's my one little concern. If they have a bad year in Chicago and they fire Eberflus and they bring in more of like a younger head coach out of the McVay or Andy Reid, maybe I'd be a lot more excited for Caleb Williams. But other than that, there's no doubt that this is going to be exciting in Chicago as they're going to have a new start in their franchise.
Yeah, and I mean there are of course some reasons for concern. He had a lot of fumbles. He sometimes held on to the ball too long, but his accuracy, his way he can make plays, outside the pocket, and just that underrated speed has him set way ahead of amongst everybody else. But yeah, we're obviously not a huge fan of Chicago.
Mhm.
But as of just looking at his talent, he's definitely the top guy in this draft. Moving on to number 2, we got we got ourselves Jayden Daniels, and I'm gonna look at it kind of more in the fact that the Commanders are wanting him. They are
Mhm.
that's kind of like the archetype quarterback they're looking into. Obviously, this past week they met with a bunch of quarterbacks, all those top guys that we're going to be talking about shortly. But he, Heisman winner as well. He just won this past year. I mean, he was a touchdown machine. He's got the rushing upside, probably the best in the draft.
Yeah.
And then, his passing, obviously you could say, oh, he had Malik Neighbors and he had Brian Thomas, but so did Joe Burrow, who had, Jefferson and Chase, and he was still, I mean, he's still, one of the top quarterbacks in the league. So Jayden Daniels, he has a lot of those intangibles that are very helpful for the modern quarterback. And now I know a question or a concern a lot of people have is he only really had, that boom one season.
Yeah.
Obviously he was at Arizona State before, and it was not pretty. Obviously, Arizona State, maybe not the best situation to thrive, but he goes to LSU, and then he has the Heisman season, which makes us
Mhm.
really excited for what he's able to put out there for whatever team he goes to. But yeah, Genoa, Jayden Daniels, and then actually, after we talk about our next guy, we'll kind of debate between those two mainly.
Yeah, so Jayden Daniels, we have the first two or the last two Heisman winners go on the first two picks in this year's draft. With Jayden Daniels, I like what I see. I love the toughness that he played through this year. Rightfully, so deserving of that Heisman, Justin. And you know what? I love him in Washington. As weird as it sounds, the Commanders did make some adjustments for their offense. They do have a pretty good running game. Dan Quinn now is the head coach. He's had a pretty decent track record as a coach coordinator. He's had some pretty heartbreaking defeats as a coach as we've seen. But I do think he can lead a team to the playoffs. And I do think Cliff Kingsbury is there. Justin, is he calling
Yep,
plays in Washington? So
will
I
be.
do kind of like that, Justin. It's kind of one of those dark horse fantasy offenses that we're kind of like, you know, underestimating a little bit. But I feel like that could be an offense if Jayden Daniels plays a full season, doesn't go out like an AR. If he plays a full season, he could be a great candidate for rookie of the year, offensive rookie of the year. Could be better than he could have a better season than Caleb Williams. So I really love Jayden Daniels there. I feel like he's ready to play. He's not going to be the guy they're going to have another guy start. I mean, he's ready to go. I love Jayden Daniels. I don't question him at all. As I think he's ready to win. I think he's ready to win and maybe lead the Commanders to a sneaky playoff run, maybe at the end of the year.
Yeah, yeah, and it just the thing is, I like how you mentioned AR a little bit because Jayden Daniels is also not afraid to take contact.
Mhm.
When he rushes the ball and he gets those plays. So hopefully there's no injuries that happen, and you can't really foresee injuries. But he is a guy that he puts his head into it, and he plays hard on every play, which is a good play for a player. But hopefully he stays on the field at all times. And Commanders are a good landing spot. But yeah, all right, on to number 3, which to me was super tough between Daniels and this guy here, Drake Maye, North Carolina quarterback. He has the build of your traditional quarterback.
Mhm.
6'4". He's a pocket passer, but he can still run. But I think a lot of the questions is he can sometimes be irrational, make some bad decisions. But he has, last year though the conversation between Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud was, people thought, Bryce Young was the guy, but then they were like, CJ Stroud has that like stereotypical quarterback
Mhm.
build. And I feel that you can kind of have a similar conversation with May and Daniels, even though Daniels is a much bigger quarterback than Bryce Young is.
Yeah.
But I like May a lot. I think he has a chance to be the best out of these guys, honestly. I think he has the highest shot besides probably Caleb Williams that you would make. Depending on, I mean, if he goes to New England, it might be a little less exciting. But if I would love him in Washington. Uh, and the poor thing about the UNC quarterbacks is the last 2 or 3 have been kind of underwhelming. Sam Howell and Mitch Trubisky. But you fly in here with Drake Maye, but I think Drake Maye is just a better quarterback than those guys
Yeah.
are, and he's just a big dude. But yeah, so I think Drake Maye has a lot to offer. He's probably going to be in the top 3 for sure. If it's the Patriots, I'm not excited as much. If it's Washington, I am, or if a team like Minnesota trades up, it'd be exciting. But yeah,
Mm.
what do you have with Drake Maye, and how would you compare and contrast them with with Jayden Daniels?
So with Drake May, I do think he has the better arm than Jayden Daniels. I do think he's going to be, I guess, sustainable to shootouts. And I do think he has a comparison to Justin Herbert in that way. I used to think it was Bo Nix, not just because he wears number 10 and goes to Oregon, but like Justin Herbert did. But I think Herbert and Drake May have those, kind of just like slingy arms that they can throw for 300 to 350 yards a game easily. So I do like Drake May. Justin, one thing that is interesting that you mentioned, I actually think opposite. I think if he does go to New England, I do think Drake May would elevate a new culture in New England and now instantly make them a playoff ready team because we look at their new head coach in Gerard Mayo. I do think he has the experience and the tools to somewhat lead a pretty good defensive team. All they're missing is an offense, Justin. And let's just
Yeah.
face it, the Patriots are pretty boring to watch now. Even now that they got rid of Mac Jones, so they need a quarterback. Let's not believe that there's something with Bailey Zappi or who I don't know who else they signed. I don't know if they brought back like Brian Hoyer or something. Wouldn't even be surprised. But I think if you were to bring Drake May into that offense, I would think that that offense would elevate, and I think that there just would be another wide receiver away for being a pretty good offense and a team that can challenge that weird AFC East with the Jets, the Bills, and the Dolphins. So I do think the Patriots have to go Drake May here at number 3. I think it fits them the best. I do think it'll elevate a new culture, a new era in New England. So if I'm the Patriots, I am penciling in. Let's go Drake May. Let's start our new era with the guy out of UNC.
And maybe they do that.
Yeah,
Pun
yeah,
intended. That'd be an interesting move there. All right, on to 4, which to me has brought maybe a lot of controversy, definitely amongst us two here. I got my guy JJ McCarthy at 4. I know your thoughts on it. Let me throw in mine real quick, and I'll let you. I'll divert to you. But JJ McCarthy, Michigan quarterback, most recent national champion under Jim Harbaugh. Um, I mean, there's red flags that you can throw at him. They didn't throw it that much. They're one of the highest rushing teams. Then you're like, he only threw 22 touchdowns. Bo Nix threw 45 touchdowns. Why would I want a guy like JJ McCarthy?
yeah.
Well, first off, JJ's 21. Bo Nix is what, 24. Another thing too, JJ, they didn't have to throw. Like Michigan was up at so many games at the end, where they just put in the backup or just let Blake Corum just run wild.
Yeah.
That's why I like what JJ can do. I mean, he played against some really great talent. I mean, in the Big Ten, there's a lot to take there. But I can understand the worries, and I think something that's gonna be that I like to point out is I think JJ has the potential to be one of the better quarterbacks in this draft. But day one, I don't know if I'd want him to be the starter for the team he goes to.
Yeah.
And that's what makes him going top 4 or top 5, overall a little questionable because if you throw him into, if the Giants go crazy and decide to pick him or something, I don't know if I'd love him day one as a starter. I don't know if he's ready. He's more raw than a guy like Penix or Nix. But if you're wanting a guy for your franchise that you think could hit the highest heights, that's why I like JJ. But I'd like to hear what you got to say on Mr. McCarthy.
I'm very mixed on JJ McCarthy. I just feel like compared to the other 3 quarterbacks, Justin, I'm not 100% a believer that he has that talent to flourish offenses and
Yeah.
win divisions, win games. Now, you do make a great point. If a team were to draft him, maybe like I'm not really sure what would be a good team to draft him. If you're Minnesota and you draft JJ McCarthy, you're going to automatically expect for him to be a starter unless you believe in Sam Darnold. I believe they have Sam Darnold on their roster now in Minnesota. Uh, I
They
just
do.
I just don't know. if like that offense, you have a star receiver who's ready to win now. You have a head coach who's been around, who has been, becoming one of the promising young head coaches in Minnesota with O'Connell. And so I'm just not 100% sure. Is that the guy you go all in for in that offense? I'm not 100%. If you were to get the Aaron Rodgers, Jordan Love treatment, where he sits behind a veteran guy and learns, I wouldn't hate that at all. Then I would believe, okay, maybe McCarthy does have potential in the future. Maybe like a team like Atlanta, Justin. I know they just signed Kirk Cousins, but maybe they can have a guy play behind Kirk Cousins, give Kirk Cousins 2 years in Atlanta. If he doesn't win anything, then hey, it's McCarthy time. That's what I feel like they should do. Also, Kirk Cousins is also coming off an injury, so you're not 100% sure if he's going to be okay. If he's not, 100% all year with that pretty, promising young offense in Atlanta, you might not make the playoffs. So McCarthy, to me, Justin, does fit like in Atlanta. But if I'm like Minnesota, Justin, or New England, I'm not picking them with the third, or if I'm Minnesota, I don't think I'm trading up for that guy. If anything, I'll stay where I'm at and just wait for Penix or Bo Nix. So that's where I feel. I do understand that he has won at the highest level, but that team was so loaded, that defense. He did have a good playoff run in the college football playoffs. He did have a great game against Bama. And I think overall they were just better than Washington in the title game. But, McCarthy, if he has a couple years to sit, I do believe, yes, he will be a good quarterback, but not off the bat, not yet.
Yeah, it's crazy. I feel like a lot of people are kind of viewing JJ as like a smaller guy.
Yeah.
He's actually bigger than Caleb Williams is, which is a surprise to many. And he's
Ah.
got some serious underrated arm talent. That's why I like him, and I think he's kind of coming under the radar, even though the NFL loves him. NFL is supposedly all over him, but the public isn't as much. But I can see. I think I agree with you a lot on is teams might want to not have to trade up for a guy they think can become a really good player, and they can wait to a mid to late first rounder or even early second rounder to get a guy like Penix, Nix. Wait even later, get Rattler. I think Rattler's underrated. So there's gives and there's takes there with McCarthy. But the Michigan quarterback who got the big stamp of approval by his former head coach,
Yeah.
Jim Harbaugh, which is good praise, even though you could be very biased praise. But all right. On to number 5. There's between two guys that I think we've debated about a lot. But here we got Michael Penix Jr., the Washington product, the transfer student who became a very exciting watch all of last year. There's so many pluses, there's so many negatives. He's not a runner, he's a pocket passer, the best pocket passer in this draft, which if depending on the team scheme could be very important. A team like Miami, I mean, obviously he gets the Tua comps because he's left-handed, but he could really fit in Miami if they decide Tua is not the place to be, or like their franchise quarterback.
You're onto something. Yeah.
I don't know. I like that a lot because he's got
Love
that
that.
pinpoint accuracy.
Yeah.
And then a lot of people are like, can he translate to the NFL? He had Roma Dunze and McMillan and Polk as his wide receivers.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did have a stacked wide receiver core. He did have a stacked O-line. So hopefully maybe a thing that could determine his success in the league is where he lands. If he lands on a team that's questionable in those regards, it could be a little bit harder. But yeah, give me your thoughts with Penix and a guy that's he's been all around the college football, but he's now headed to the NFL.
Yeah, Justin, Penix has really surprised me throughout this whole year. I do remember when the Heisman Trophy was revealed who won it, and Daniels won it. I remember I texted our group chat and I was like, you know what, Justin? I actually felt like, Michael Penix Jr. should have won that. Even though I wasn't so impressed with him during the year, I looked back at it and I said, hey, well, he did bring a Washington State undefeated, and they did beat Oregon twice, right? And so
Yeah,
I was real surprised on how great Penix played. I don't put the title game on him. I just do think the Michigan team was overall better. They recruited better, and they were coached by Jim Harbaugh. And so, with Penix, I do believe that he can be great, Justin. I do think that Miami, if you're the Dolphins, if you're Mike McDaniels in Miami, I do think they should be listening to Justin Pies here and go with Penix, because you know what? that accuracy with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, and if you can drive another speedster, and they have Raheem Mostert and
Fun.
our guy Devon A-Chain in that
That's right.
offense, that would be crazy, Justin. I would love Penix as a top 7 fantasy quarterback. I'm putting him in all my DraftKings lineups week in and week out.
Right.
But yeah, we might have to tag Miami into this too because this is crazy. Anyways, I love Penix. I do think he should have maybe won the Heisman, brought his team all the way to the title game, and he diced up my beloved Longhorns in that Sugar Bowl in the first round of the playoffs. Man, diced them up. I mean, literally made every throw, and I was impressed as a Longhorn fan. Justin, I had to tip my hat off to Penix, and I had to say, you know what, this guy's the real deal. He should have won the Heisman, and you know what? If they won it all against Michigan, I would have said, hey, this probably would have been the best seasons, one of the best seasons, an underrated season in college football history. But hey, I do believe Penix can be good. You just got to be careful with that knee. He had so many surgeries on that knee, Justin. In the NFL, that pass rush is vicious. Thankfully, guys like Aaron Donald is retired. But hey, guys like Will Anderson, our boy Will Anderson, is on the upcome. But that's the only concern with Penix. The talent is there, Justin. No doubt the talent's there. But when he's going to need to get out the pocket and run for those yards, you're just going to kind of cringe a little bit when he kind of slides. So we have to make sure that Penix has that sliding game down when he's running. But other than that, I believe Penix can be a good quarterback. But I would love to see him in Miami now, Justin. I will not forget that take. I will not forget them in Miami.
I'm glad.
Yeah.
The thing, I mean, Penix, I'm going to go back to last year again. Stroud, the NFL got it wrong to me at one point because with Bryce Young, they were like, we love him, Alabama, but Stroud was the more accurate guy. He's precise, and that's what brings me to Penix now. And I'm like, if it's going to translate, if history will repeat itself in a way, the pocket passer who can hit his wide receivers in stride is more important than a guy that can run for 6-7 yards out of a scramble. So that's why I'm really a fan of him. I know he's kind of an older prospect, which can be questionable, but he was all right even at Indiana, and now at Washington. Obviously, he exploded into something way better. But yeah, all right. So we have him there. There's a number of teams that could be his suitor. I like Miami. I've heard the Raiders is one too. But moving on to the next guy who just seems destined to be a Denver Bronco, Bo Nix. Bo Nix, Oregon quarterback. I'm going to tell you in all candid honesty right now, he needs to go to a team with an offensive-minded coach that's strong like that, like Sean Payton. I love that. That right there where he could go, because I watched him when he played at Auburn a couple of years ago, and it was ugly. He played a porous A&M team, and we lit them up. Like he couldn't go anywhere. It just wasn't a great. And then obviously he transfers to Oregon, and it blossoms. Obviously he had a really good core around him. Got Troy Franklin, a baller, and then Dan Lanning is a great head coach. And he just had, he led college football in passing touchdowns, was second in passing yards. He had the goods. He had a great season. But in those big games, he did not win them. The Washington games, he lost twice, and season making moments, it wasn't there for him. And what is he? He's 24 or gonna be 24. It's like it all depends where he goes, and I think that's true for probably a lot of people in this draft. Even when we get into receivers and running backs and just the rest of the positions, it kind of depends where you land, and I think it matters where he goes because he's going to need a situation to help him. I don't know if he will outshine a poor situation, but I like him to an extent. I think he's capable, and he might be one of the more day one ready, unlike a JJ McCarthy, who I think has a higher ceiling, but not on the first, not in week one. But yeah, what are your thoughts with Nix? I think you like him a little bit.
I think I like Bo Nix. I do. I was a fan of him all year. You made some great points. The years before, I do believe he was at Ole Miss, right, Justin? He was okay at Ole Miss. Oh, Auburn. Okay. He's good. Now I think he's the best fit in Minnesota over JJ McCarthy. So if I'm the Vikings, I do like Bo Nix's arm to sling it around to Jefferson, and Addison now, who we've loved. Who Addison's going to be pretty good this year, Justin.
Yeah.
So I do like Bo Nix to fit there. Also, you have a running game with Aaron Jones. So Bo Nix is pretty good, under the radar quarterback. He's a guy, Justin, that you don't have to trade up for. He can fall to you at 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13-ish, I feel like.
Yeah, we can go there.
So it's rather down with him between him and McCarthy. I do like Bo Nix over McCarthy. I don't know if I like Bo Nix over Penix. I'm gonna get Penix. He has a better accurate arm, as where Bo Nix is more of like a deep threat type of slinger, more
Yeah.
like a Drake May to how Justin Herbert is. So that's kind of where I see Bo Nix. I do like him the best in Minnesota.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be a good landing spot for him. I mean, great pieces around him.
Mm-hmm.
But Nick's the 24-year-old. We'll see how that unfolds. And let's see where he lands on Thursday. Now, this next guy at our 7th spot, I think is probably, I'm going to just put my most underrated quarterback in this draft. I think he has the capabilities of being, right up there with the talks of those top 3 guys we talked about. This is Spencer Rattler of South Carolina. Obviously was touted as the top player in high school. He goes to Oklahoma and struggles,
Yeah.
then gets benched by, Caleb Williams, a guy in this draft. And it just seems like a storybook ending if he could come back from the depths. I mean, obviously he transferred to South Carolina, had some good moments, had some bad moments. He wasn't part of a great team.
Yeah.
But I think, he was the Senior Bowl MVP, which is huge. It's a huge tell for people who do well. We might dig into that on the wide receivers, especially
Yeah.
players that really, surpass expectations in the Senior Bowl and make a name for themselves there. They translate to being good NFL players.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that could happen for Rattler depending on where he goes. Hopefully he's not, you know, selected into a team that, where he's the firm backup. Hopefully he gets a chance to start, or maybe like in a year or so if it works out. It depends where he goes. Hopefully he's a day 1 guy. Probably won't be
Yeah.
day 2. He'll be day 2, maybe a 3rd rounder. Late 2nd would be cool, but I think he has the capabilities to do it. He got sacked a lot. He wasn't part of a great O line though. So he has his goods and he has his bads, but I'm really sticking to the Senior Bowl MVP, which I'm most people that do well at the Senior Bowl can translate into
Yeah.
really good NFL players. But yeah, do you have any thoughts on what Rattler will be?
So with Rattler, Justin, I thought it was the end of him when he left Oklahoma. Even after Caleb Williams left Oklahoma, we thought, okay, maybe Rattler has another chance. However, Rattler, he left and went to South Carolina. Wasn't always the best. He had some good games, had some bad games, but he was never in the Heisman race, Justin. He was never
Mhm.
better than Bryce Young the year that he won Heisman, or Caleb the year before, even better than Daniels this year or Penix. So he was never really a top 7 college football quarterback in the last 2 years. And I know he had Heisman hopes not that long ago. But here's the thing. You mentioned the Senior Bowl MVP, and I do think that shows me something if I'm a GM. Now, I'm not picking him in the first round, but here's something interesting, Justin. This is a dream scenario that I have with Spencer Rattler. I think I said this in the previous episode. I think the number 1 spot for Spencer Rattler is to end up in Seattle on day 2. Day 2, Seattle makes the call. We have
Right.
Geno. We have Sam Howell. Let's go with how this guy Spencer Rattler in Seattle. He has the arm to get the ball to guys like DK Metcalf and Jackson Smith and Jigba and Tyler Lockett. And they have a pretty good running game with Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet, who I've always been a fan of. This offense just needs that gunslinger quarterback. They're one gunslinger quarterback away in a division that we don't know what we're going to get from the 49ers. We don't know what we're going to get from the Rams. Is Stafford going to be that guy? This division is slightly wide open with many good teams. In Seattle, let's go with Rattler. Let's get this gunslinger guy to get to our playmakers, and we're going to be a team now with the new head coach and Mike McDonough, who's going to be pretty good, Justin. I like that scenario for Rattler. He's going to need, just like Bo Nix, an offensive ready team, a quarterback plug in and play. Will he be starting week 1 or week 2? No, because I think they'll probably go with Geno or maybe Sam Howell. But later down the line, if you're struggling, if you're 3-4, 3-3, maybe 4-5, and the division is kind of in a tight race, I say you go with the guy out of South Carolina. Rattler will be one of those guys that can win you games with a good offense.
Yeah, yeah. Getting into this area, those quarterbacks, it
Yeah.
really depends on where they land. So you make a good point there. All right, on to 8. The guy that is kind of, to me, taking social media by storm with his arm talent.
Mm-hmm.
It's Joe Milton of the Tennessee Volunteers. kind of written off pretty quickly to me
Yeah.
during the season. Nobody was like, he's not going to make waves. But then a video comes out of him launching the ball like 70 or 80
Yeah.
yards. Like it was like a monster throw and hits his receiver in stride. He's very athletic, a super athletic quarterback. Successful at Tennessee, wasn't as as bright as Hendon Hooker was in the years prior, but he's huge. He's
Yeah.
6'5". He's a big guy. He got long arms, big hands, pretty fast. I mean, he follows all the athletic attributes to be a good quarterback. It's all up here of what he can do on the field. He's got that the IQ as a quarterback to be successful, and that's where it could be a falter. But if he lands at a spot where he can really learn, because he won't be a starter this season unless some unforeseen circumstances
Yeah.
happen. But there's a number of teams I like him to go. I don't know if I could name like one in particular, but yeah, what are your thoughts with Milton? Could he become something in the
Yeah,
NFL?
yeah, absolutely. Milton, Justin, it's interesting that he's on here. I feel like Tennessee the past 2 years have been very underrated and slept on. They've had really good seasons, and they're in the SEC, Justin, who we're all familiar with. They've been pretty good, and so last year they had who's the guy? Is it Hendon Hooker, who's the backup to Goff in Detroit? He was pretty good
Yep.
up until he got hurt. So I feel like I guess that kind of hurts the stock for some Tennessee players. I don't know why they're so under the radar, but I love Joe Milton. He could go end of second, early third. I do think that maybe a team like Las Vegas could probably snatch him up and get it. Maybe if the Broncos don't go quarterback first round for some weird reason, maybe Milton can go to Denver. There's some other teams that he can be nitty and gritty for. I feel like he's that gritty type of player that can just win you games. Won't always have the prettiest stat lines, but will put you in positions to win games and make plays. And I do like Milton. He has a decent arm, but I feel like he can be impactful with his legs.
Yeah, that essentially encapsulate. I mean, he's just a great athlete.
Yeah, yeah.
And coming in the NFL, if you have all those things, just make sure you can hit your guys
Mhm.
and you make smart plays. Another thing too that I know we brought up Hendon Hooker. Hendon Hooker had Hyatt. He had Cedric Tillman.
Yeah,
Those guys left before Milton was the starting quarterback, so it wasn't the same, special highlight offense. I know he had Jalen Wright at
yeah.
running back, but wasn't as highly touted as it was last year. That's why I like him. I think he's an interesting player. And then the last quarterback we're going to cover, Jordan Travis of Florida
Yeah,
State, was on fire to start. Big win over LSU, and then at the middle part of the season, the big injury that's sidelined the year.
yeah,
Obviously, he won't be ready to start the season, but he was actually I believe he was in Heisman talks
yeah. He was.
before he got hurt. And then, of course, Florida State goes undefeated. They don't make the playoff. There's drama, controversy everywhere. Oh, if only Jordan Travis was still there.
Yeah,
But now he's headed to the draft. Probably a day 3 guy, most likely.
yeah.
Maybe a late day 2 guy. But I think he's got some serious upside
hmm
um, to be possibly something. What are your thoughts? I'll let you take that one.
You know what, Justin? I'm actually a believer in Jordan Travis. I don't know where he's going to end up. I don't know where he's, being looked at right now by current NFL GMs. But Justin, I'm a believer in Jordan Travis, and I do think one day, Jordan Travis will have his time to shine for an NFL team. And you mentioned what he was able to do this past season before he got hurt. Florida State, would have made the college football playoff if Jordan Travis was healthy. The committee did not believe that team was going to be entertaining to watch on those New Year games for the playoffs. So I do believe Travis could have made a pretty deep run into that, playoffs. And I'm not sure where he goes, Justin. I do think he's going to be a day 3 guy just because of the injury. I don't think GMs they're going to think it's more important to go with another offensive lineman, or another D lineman, or another cornerback, rather than getting a guy who had a really bad injury, nasty injury, right at the end of the college football season. Justin, it didn't just happen like during the season or during the middle end. No, it happened right at the end of the season, right when voting for the playoffs began. But I do think I did make a case for Rattler to go to Seattle. Jordan Travis could be that guy too that they can believe in, or Jordan Travis could be a guy that a team like Atlanta can go to. They just signed Kirk Cousins, for a couple years. Let's give Jordan Travis the time to not only learn but heal. In the next 2 years, Jordan Travis and Drake London can make sweet magic with Kyle Pitts in that dynamic offense that's led behind Bijan Robinson. So if I'm Jordan Travis, or if I'm Atlanta, Justin, I am scouting to see where Jordan Travis is, because that is a guy that we can sit and wait, that the fans aren't always going to root, or the media go with Jordan Travis, because everybody knows that he's hurt, and it takes the pressure off of Kirk Cousins to lead that Falcons team. So Jordan Travis is a guy that if a team gets him, definitely don't rush him. If he has to sit out this upcoming season, so be it. Forego his rookie year and start off year 2 fresh, ready to go. I do believe Jordan Travis has that like Jordan Love, a little bit of a Tua with a better arm. That's what I feel like, with a better rushing upside for Jordan Travis. So I'm a believer in Jordan Travis. Wherever he goes, he could be a steal.
No, I like that a lot, and I'm looking at his like the what we talking about on him, and this guy. I mean, I'm looking at some quotes from execs, like mentally sharp, serious arm
Yeah.
talent, is a strong running threat. It seems like he's got a pretty all around skill set. It just depends on where he'll get the opportunity. That unfortunate injury has made his stock fall pretty strongly. But let's transition to the tight ends. There's less than last year we had a few that were very interesting, like Laporta and stuff like that. And there was a couple more. I don't know why I'm forgetting them off the top. But
Yeah. Yeah.
this year it's a little bit thinner, but there's one guy at the very top. His name is Brock Bowers of the Georgia Bulldogs. This offseason has been an interesting story for him. I feel like at the beginning it was like surefire top 5, top 8 guy. A
Yeah.
lot of people are mocking him to the Chargers. Now it looks like he might be slipping to, I've seen earliest 10 to the Jets. I've seen lowest to like Miami and stuff like that in the low 20s. So I'm interested. He's got a little bit of volatility where he could go, but he is a generational talent at
Yeah.
tight end. And I'm really excited. I think I would love for him in New York, in the New York
Yeah.
Jets, for the New York Jets, because he's by far the best tight end in this draft, and arguably the best tight end in the last couple of drafts. You can look at him and be like, he's a little bit smaller. I mean, he's 6'4", but he doesn't play like a super huge tight end, and he's not known for being the best blocker.
Yeah.
But man, can he catch and run as a tight end, and those mismatches with linebackers will prove to be a really big advantage for whoever uses him. So I'm a huge fan of Bowers. I hope he goes to a team like I said, the Jets. I know Cincinnati signed Mike Gesicki, but I would love him in
Ooh.
Cincinnati. And then I've heard the biggest one being the Colts. Um,
Ooh.
so there's some good spots, and I feel like he can fit in just about anywhere and be effective. So yeah, like, would you want to exert, a high first rounder on a tight end, or I mean, what do you think he should be taken, or just give me your thoughts too on just Bowers himself?
I'm hoping he gets taken pretty early. You mentioned the Jets, but you also make a case for Cincinnati. I mean, that would be good, Justin. I mean, you're making
Yeah,
some great takes today. I would love to see Brock Bowers in Cincinnati. Now I'm hung on to that. I want that to happen now. Like, I'm gonna call Cincinnati, hey, get Brock Bowers so you can have him with
let's
Joe
do it.
Burrow and Jamar Chase. Let's make that happen. Trade up. Come on, Cincinnati. You might lose T Higgins, so
I love
so
John Pat.
I would like that. With the Jets, yeah, I think he could be good with Aaron Rodgers. I'm just not confident if Aaron Rodgers is going to last full season. I don't know, but anyways, I do feel like Brock Bowers should probably be going within like the first. I would say between 8 and 13. Maybe a team like Denver, Justin. It's like, hey, we need a pass catcher. We need a tight end. Let's go guy and get a quarterback later. Maybe a team in Vegas who they're going to probably go with the quarterback, but Bowers or Justin, the Saints would be kind of interesting. They kind of have a weird tight end thing going on with Juwan Johnson and Taysom Hill. It's like the weirdest tight end situation I've probably ever seen in my life. Maybe they need a new star tight end. They brought back Jimmy Graham this past season, but hey, they need a new Jimmy Graham. So maybe Brock Bowers could be that guy. And the Colts is very interesting, Justin. I mean, talk about getting Anthony Richardson, another target in that really stout team in Indianapolis, led, by Shane Steichen, who's that team's gonna be tough. So That's going to be really good. I would like to see him in Cincinnati. As much as I hate the Colts because I'm a Texans fan, it would be nice to also see him be with AR. But I do think the most likely scenario that I would like to see him in is in Cincinnati now. I mean, maybe the Jets was my first favorite, but I like Burrow now with the future with Bowers.
Yeah, and the fact that they're having issues with T. Higgins,
Yeah,
it'd be really good to get a pass catcher in there to be the next nice piece for them. So,
yeah,
yeah, it's pretty much like Brock Bowers at the tight end position, and then it just falls to day two,
yeah.
and there might be one or two sprinkled in day two, but the rest will be in day three. But here are a few guys definitely to note. Jatavion Sanders out of Texas. You're Texas.
Yeah,
He's a solid yak guy,
yeah,
not a big blocker type of dude. But if teams are looking for a receiving tight end, he could fill that
yeah,
role. He's pretty fast. In the 4.6s
yeah.
as a tight end is pretty interesting. So I'm interested, and it obviously depends where he lands. He'll be in day two. Um, but Texas playing at a good team, amongst a lot of good talent, he was able to have a pretty solid season, a pretty solid college career. But yeah, tell me about your Texas tight end here. Does he have what it takes?
Yeah, no, yeah. Jatavius Sowers is pretty good. I don't think he'll go the second round. He's probably gonna it could be an end of second, early third guy. You mentioned he hasn't been the greatest blocker, which yes, he hasn't, but I do think he is a yak guy, a guy that can get you a big time play of 30, like a consistent guy that's gets you 20 plus yard catches. Will he end up with 150, 150? No, but he's gonna make you plays. He's a deep threat kind of tight end. He's more of like a receiver playing tight end. I guess it's why his blocking is just a little bit off. I guess that's why some scouts believe he's not the best blocker. But there's always room for improvement with Sanders. I do think he's I don't want to say day three guy. I do think he's a round three guy. If you can get him in the middle of round three, you don't have to trade a pick. It just falls to you. And you already have an established offense that doesn't have a tight end yet, Justin. Teams like Cincinnati and New Orleans that have those Taysom Hills, the Gesicki's, but they don't have a guy that's already like a Mark Andrews, like a Laporta,
Right.
established guy. So yes, definitely this is a guy that you can get in a second or third round and be great. Another point to be made about all these tight ends, Justin, is no one thought this about Travis Kelce or Gronkowski or
True.
Laporta. Maybe Andrews a little bit, but definitely not Kittle. I know Kittle's kind of fallen down the graces, but he's been pretty good in this league. No one really talked about these tight ends that much. People like Evan Ingram got more hype, like Eric Ebron. I don't know if you remember him. Those guys
Yeah.
got way more hype going into the draft, and they haven't really been so great like Travis Kelce and Laporta. So definitely feel like Sanders could be falling on the radar and have a decent year.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think another thing we have to point out with all the guys besides Brock, tight ends are not usually super impactful in year one.
Yeah,
Obviously, we saw Sam Laporta. And maybe you could argue Kyle Pitts' rookie year, but
yeah,
it's not a normal thing for a tight end to have a big fantasy year.
yeah.
That's why we're talking about so few of them.
Mhm.
But they're definitely somewhere to note because in the future they could be some importance, have some
Yeah,
importance. So the next guy is Kansas State tight end Ben Sinnett. Um, I watched okay. You literally watch one video of Mel Kiper Jr. talking about Ben Sinnett, and it gets you a little bit hyped for him.
yeah,
He's a big guy. He's athletic. He can block. And so it's like he's in a high percentage at the shuttle and at the combine. He has some good pieces in there, but I kind of relate him to the guy next to him, Cade Stover out of Ohio State,
yeah,
a possession catcher type of guy. In my notes, I was like, this guy just catches the ball,
yeah,
not maybe a little Dalton Schultz esque.
yeah,
He's not going for big plays. Neither of these two guys, but they both kind of have some potential to be a stable tight end in the NFL, and that's why I'm interested in them too. Do you have any thoughts on what Stover or Sinnett could be?
No, Stanek could be good. Uh, you know, we're not really so interested. He could fall. I think Stanek is definitely a fifth round guy. Surprisingly,
Oh,
I think Kate Stover is the better guy. I know statistically he didn't have the craziest season. He only had 500 yards, 5 touchdowns with 41 catches. In a team with Marvin and that dynamic, Ohio State that was a little underwhelming this year after the departure of C.J. Stroud. I do feel like Stover has more upside. I'm not sure. I just have this feeling about him. He does give me Dalton Schultz, yak kind of guy, guy that can get you 6, 7 catches, 80 plus yards. Not going to have the most fanciest Travis Kelsey, prime Gronkowski or this year's Laporta. I feel like he's going to be just a very good yak guy, just like Sanders is. I do like Stover in the third round. I think Cincinnati should go for one of these guys, a Stover, a Brock, a Sanders. They need a guy that's kind of that yak-esque, brings that presence to the team to balance out those offenses.
Yeah, that's not
Yeah.
bad. They both have that potential, but it's not day one potential. So hold your horses a little bit.
Yeah.
And then the
Yeah.
last two guys are definitely this next guy. This guy, his name is Jaheim Bell,
Hmm.
Florida State tight end. Brother is tiny. He is
Yeah.
6'2", which will make anybody who wants him at tight end kind of question it.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, a wide receiver we'll talk about in the next episode, Johnny Wilson, is a bigger guy who plays wide receiver, but
Yeah.
people have talked about him being a tight end. I could get behind that more than a guy like Jaheim Bell being
Yeah.
my tight end for a team. He'll be a depth piece in the NFL, in my thoughts. But similar to these guys here, he's just a yak guy. He just
Yeah.
catches it and he'll get some yards. Not a super well known blocker. But he should get drafted. Definitely will be a day 3 pick. And then this last guy, Theo Johnson out of Penn State. There's some underrated things of him. He's 6'6", so he's the biggest of the guys we've talked about so far. Penn State has been good with tight ends at times. Gesicki is one. And so it now, I mean, now we're just kind of throwing out names that could be some late. I mean, they definitely won't be picked in your dynasty drafts, these
Mhm.
last few guys. But they're worth noting in case of injury or something. But they're fine pieces. All are fine pieces. And yeah, do you have any thoughts on these last two, Theo or Jaheim?
Yeah, they're all could be good. I'm looking at Theo Johnson, and he's going to be needed on those run heavy teams. So a team like San Francisco 49ers that's going to need to improve the run game as they do each year. What's a good rushing team? Maybe a team like Dallas if they want to improve their running game. They need to get a guy late. This guy, I mean, Theo Johnson's probably going to fall. I don't want to say fifth, but I would say fourth, fifth. I don't think sixth. But that's the guy that you should be looking out for. Bell. He was catching passes from Jordan Travis. He was pretty good. So, you just gotta, I guess, get them in the later rounds. They could all be good. As far as dynasty, yeah. I mean, unless you're like in a 12, 14 man dynasty, sure. But we'll see.
Yeah. Well, yeah, guys, that really wraps up quarterbacks and tight ends. Spicy at the top. Obviously, tight ends. There's one guy that is worth the biggest note of Brock Bowers, and then
Hmm.
these quarterbacks, man. There's a number of them that can make impacts. Obviously, we have the top guys.
Yeah.
A lot of first round quarterbacks. It looks like, unlike a few years ago with Kenny Pickett's draft, where there was
Yeah.
one. Draft night's in a few days. And we're going to be right back with you guys because we're about to do some running backs and wide receivers for the draft. And so stay tuned because we're going to be right back. But for this episode, we're gonna say peace. Okay, so we'll see y'all in a second. Peace out.